don't get me wrong too. If you ever sign up for an IBJJF tournament, I do myself. You should absolutely play the rule set and play the game that there is. But in my opinion, it's just not the highest expression of jiu-jitsu competition, and that's what I'm trying to create is the highest expression of jiu-jitsu competition.
What is up, ladies and gents? It is your friendly neighborhood BJJ podcaster, Raph Esparza, coming to you with another installment of the Grappling Hour. I hope that you are having a fantastic day. My day is off to a good start here with the unofficial, official Grappling Hour mug. I'd like to say you can buy one of these. I'm not even sure if I have it on sale. I got to figure that out. You should buy them if they're available. What a great marketing moment. Go me. I like plugging products that you potentially cannot buy. All right. Anyway, few housekeeping things. First and foremost, I appreciate you being here. I want to tell you guys, if you are not a subscriber to the Grappling Hour community, it would mean a lot to me if you were. To do that, go on over to HY.PAGE /Grappling Hour. And for $5 a month, you could see these interviews 30 days before anybody else. And for a few extra dollars, you could see extra bonus content that we do with our guests, including tape studies, fight breakdowns, extra episodes. And when I say extra episodes, I mean like extra podcasts, extra interviews. So we do specialized minisodes on athletes who tell their favorite competitors that they've had respect for, their thoughts on steroids, special engagements on every single topic that you guys sometimes pitch to us. And then we're starting a new segment where people can roast my competition footage. Because, I mean, I think it's pretty bad. But I think it's also pretty amp for people to go ahead and make fun of. And I'm perfectly fine with that. The problem is most of the people in jiu-jitsu, not that funny. Our guest today is actually pretty funny. And we'll get to him in a second. But before we do, I want to remind you guys, you can check us out on Discord as well, at Grappling Hour. You can find out when new episodes are coming up, engage in daily discourse about all topics in jiu-jitsu, and much, much more. Also, subscribe to the channel. Don't be a dick. All right. What about our guest? Here's what I can tell you about him. He is somebody who has been working very hard in the scenes, and he's parlaying his work as an excellent jiu-jitsu meme content creator into running tournaments. Now, I understand. Yes, Raph, that sounds like something you've done before. No, but he's doing it well. And he is servicing the Arizona community, and they have an event coming up on September 16th. And whenever we get new people into the realm of hosting competitions, I immediately want to know more about them because guess what? One, running competitions, not easy. But two, it means that they share a similar sort of vibe that we believe in here at the show, which is we want to give people opportunities. We want to see people have the chances, the moments, the matches that can allow them to create careers and go on to do even bigger and better things. So because I share that sort of similar concept with our guest today, I decided he fits in the same wheelhouse as we do. And now I'm learning he has a podcast as well, which I guess begs the question here. Am I supposed to timeline and correct it and take out this guest or befriend him? We'll find out at the end of this interview. But for right now, ladies and gents, please welcome for the very first time on the show, one Joey Werner. Joey, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Raph. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it is. It is a pleasure to meet you as well. I'm glad you could say that after I essentially threatened you in your introduction, but I'm glad you're able to see through the nonsense of it. I have to ask this, sir.
A good challenge.
No, I've seen your work. You're pretty good. So it would be, when you say it's a challenge, the challenge is more on my end. I have to ask you this, man. Jiu-Jitsu meme guy. Jiu-Jitsu creator for an event and jiu-jitsu podcaster. Are you doing too much? Because to me, that's a lot on one plate, man.
Yeah, I mean it is quite a lot, and it's not even including my day job too. So I'm pretty busy all hours of the day, but got to find stuff that you're into. And honestly, the podcasting, the jujitsu events, it's something that I absolutely love. So it's been actually pretty easy pouring a lot of love and attention into it.
Okay, now anybody who's worth a damn as a host may notice I didn't brand your name in the introduction. And I think with good reason, because I need you to be here to walk me through this name, because I would potentially butcher the name, but the name of the page you have is Butter Smooth. So it's good to expand that Butter Smooth Moves Instagram handle. And obviously people recognize that brand. But the branding name for your jiu-jitsu competition is Butter Smooth Fight Clubs.
Yes.
So I guess we're going to go to the original thing. Where did Butter Smooth come from, and why is it a jiu-jitsu thing?
Well, Butter Smooth Moves isn't actually just a jujitsu thing. It started from I was training on some Saturday morning, maybe 2 years ago now, with my buddy Jeff. And we were talking and we were going over some event that just happened. And I was like, damn, those were some Butter Smooth moves right there. And I said that little word, series of words. I was like, that'd be a pretty good Instagram name. And so I said that between him and I, and then sort of secretly created the Instagram account. And I was posting on it, and I would post really anything. A lot of it originally was jujitsu and MMA, but anytime I saw a sick crossover in basketball, or someone break some ankles in football, or a sick dance move, or basically anything that I saw was butter smooth, I would post it on the account. And I was just having fun with it. I literally didn't tell anyone that it was me. And then I had one post go viral, and it's got like within about a month it had like over 10 million views. I think now it's at like 16 or 17 million views. It got to a million likes, like something like 100,000 comments, and it blew up the page like within a series of just a few weeks. So it went from literally no followers, few here, few there, just from posting stuff, to like in about a month it had like 12 or 13,000 followers. So a respectable page now. And I was doing funny things, like I would repost my friends' content and say like, I don't know who this guy is, but this is some butter smooth moves right here. And then they would reach out to me and like, hey, we must know each other, or you must have seen my stuff through the jiu-jitsu community. I see, I have like jiu-jitsu. At the time I was jiu-jitsu purple belt. I had that in my bio. We must know each other through that. And then I'd be like, it's Joey. Just and so, I was just having fun doing that. And that's all, honestly, all the page was for a long time. And then I decided last year, I'd been thinking about it for a while, to start a jujitsu competition. And, I committed to it probably like third, fourth quarter last year. And then as far as name creation, I just kind of played it off of, because I had a page with a decent following now. I kind of use it to promote, and I call it the Butter Smooth Fight Club. And then it's a good acronym too for all my events. We had the BSFC1 on May 20th, and BSFC2 is coming up here on September 16th. So it's evolved into a number of different things.
Yeah, it took me a second because, I like to tell people I have some form of dyslexia. I think it's just laziness. I think my eyes just kind of start reading something and stop doing it. And I go, wait, is this bare knuckle fighting? Like, I just saw the very quick, anything with a B was just like, is this bare knuckle?
Yeah.
Is this what they're doing?
Yeah.
Having said that, okay, I get that. I get the butter smooth. And honestly, and this is where I should credit you, you gave more of a description as to how that name works than PJ Barch talking about why he's a butter panther. I've interviewed him multiple times and I still don't have an answer on that. So kudos to you for being ahead of PJ on that. Having said that, when you are putting this together and you are going through and you're figuring out different names, was there ever a time when you thought about breaking from that brand name? Because it's hard. Like brand association, you just figure like keep it in the family, make it easy. People already know what that is. And especially if you get something with 16 million views, you really want to harness that, because that doesn't happen all the time, but it is a good reflection of the work that you were putting out to get that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing to that, in my opinion, is that names actually mean very little. and execution means everything. So it's like, is Johnson and Johnson a fantastic name in and of itself? I don't think so. Is like, Hewlett Packard a great name? It's all about the execution of the product that they're delivering. So, I went back and forth on a few different names and I decided to run with it just because probably one, I don't want to create a third Instagram account and fucking post on all three of those. And I have a ton of fun on my Buttersmooth Moves page. And so I kind of played it off of that. And then again, I really do feel that name means very little on almost anything. And it's 99% about execution. So my real work towards this has just been in sort of the product I'm trying to deliver.
Understood. Although, respect to Johnson and Johnson. Jeez, man. Like you're out here swinging, being like, "What's Johnson and Johnson? Nothing. Weak ass name." Meanwhile, they're like at the home, being like, "What did we do, bro?" Like,
yeah. I mean, pick anything like Apple. Is that anything particular? It's all about like what they've delivered. It could have been just as easily been named Pear.
I think the funny part about Apple is I'm trying to remember if I'm even reading this mythology correctly, but I feel like they picked that name because it was highest on the alphabet. And and I think that's part of the reason why the association with the Beatles was so awkward, because Apple was the actual publishing. Like they I think it was Apple Records. So I think at first there was some sort of weird part. Like I remember when Apple was coming in and they partnered with the Beatles when they were starting to do iTunes and pods and all that sort of stuff. And I just remembered thinking like, oh my God, that's got to be a lot of money to license any of that shit. And lo and behold, I think I found out years later that they did have some issues. But you know what rich people can do? Buy things.
Yeah.
Doesn't even matter. That's why to me, I just go like, oh, that seems like it could have been a thing. I want to ask this though. Okay, so Buttersmooth fight clubs.
Yep.
And yet here you are talking about them. Are you not breaking some kind of rule or etiquette as a part of Fight Club, sir?
You're talking about, is Fight Club a separate association that I'm maybe stepping on toes on, or
No,
what do you mean?
Not even that.
Oh, you mean Fight Club like the movie?
There we go.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, so I mean, there's actually a number of different types of fight clubs. Like there's the Gentleman's Fight Club who do things. Fight Club is something. So I actually just recently trademarked Buttersmooth, and that was the lawyer's main concern, is that maybe Buttersmooth Fight Club steps on potentially, trademarking stuff with the movie brand. But I think I trademarked Buttersmooth and BSFC or something like that. I forget exactly, but
I mean, that's also very smart. So congrats to you for having the wherewithal to know, getting a thing on that. I think, and people can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a lawyer here. I think that if you are presenting it as Buttersmooth's Fight Club, it becomes an idea that it is presenting something. So even if you trademark Fight Club per se, it's a little more protected than not. That's why I think sometimes you'll see certain movies, if they have the same name, they'll say, but this is Tyler Perry's funeral. And you go, all right, I see how you're getting around this. Tyler Perry's Medea, not that other Medea. And you go, oh, that's actually pretty smart. Good for him. So just from afar.
Yeah, no, that is one of the potential concerns. It hasn't been, or it's not. The trademarking process is actually quite a long time. Actually, the two names I did was just Buttersmooth and Buttersmooth Fight Club, and we did like an extensive search apparently to make sure that there's not going to be a huge hassle. And both of those on the initial search were okay, and so hopefully in 9 months or so, I've got the official trademark.
Good on you, man. I will definitely be rooting for you on that. I want to ask though, what are you looking in for, like your Buttersmooth competitors? Because I used to, when I would run tournaments, and I still produce tournaments on the side here and there, whenever people are like throwing themselves, because they're like, oh, you're behind that, or you work on that show, I want to get on that show. And I'll immediately tell them, I'm like, here's what I'm looking for. I need somebody who does these kind of matches. Or, if I see somebody who has those kind of matches, those are the people I reach out to. And then even when we have tournaments or things that I'm behind the scenes on, if I see somebody put out their heart and they really gave us a good competition, even if they didn't win, I'm like, we're going to talk. And they go, what do you mean? Like, we'll do an interview. I'll recommend you if anybody's ever asking for stuff. Like, I have a list of people that are like my showmen, those people who I go, yep, they're going to put on a great show for you, or I'll make a recommendation to somebody else. So what are you
Yeah.
looking for the Butter Smooth Fight Club competitors?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I'm definitely looking for exciting matches, but more so, I'm really trying to create a platform that's conducive to exciting matches. And I think a lot of it will happen naturally. So, I mean, to be honest, right now, I'm just trying to fill brackets and trying to put on something that has enough depth in it where these type of things can happen. So, being a brand new competition, you have no prestige, and there's a lot of guys, especially for mine, I'm trying to, market to the highest level people. Most people who are at a high level don't like competing at no name tournaments. And I'm sure you've been a part of or experienced in some fashion going to a tournament that is just ran like absolute shit. And no one wants, I mean, it's like, we can mention names, but like there's certain ones that it's like, okay, you won that, but who cares? Because that's like, it's just a shitty tournament that really means nothing. And so, not having a history, my tournament has no prestige, and it's tough to get high level competitors to sign up for that. So, my first event, it was a complete unknown. No one had any clue if it was going to be good, if it was going to be bad, if it was going to be okay, and it went fantastic, like better than I could have ever possibly imagined or hoped for. And so I've got a high bar for myself for each one, and I'm only going to try to continue and better it every single time I do it. And as the tournament develops, it'll gain prestige and it will naturally attract high level competitors. But more so, what I'm trying to do, sort of to answer your question, is to create a platform of that is conducive to it. So mostly what I'm trying to do is actually solve some problems within the jiu-jitsu competition rule set. I think most jiu-jitsu rule sets suck and are prevent athletes from having really exciting matches. And so what I'm trying to do is sort of answer that or solve those problems and create a rule set that's conducive to extremely exciting matches and is fun for the spectators too. So like kind of like what you touched on is like if they had a really great match or something, a lot of that comes to is like if the spectators are having fun as well. And so what I'm trying to do is create a platform that is sick for the competitors, it's exciting for the spectators, and is a platform for athletes to get paid too. So I'm actually offering cash prizes for all the winners of this.
God bless. Good on you, man. Jesus Christ. You couldn't get me to give cash to some of these guys. Some of the guys, like we had actually, there's a very notable competitor who, I had made a big effort when I was producing an event for gi, and I always felt like the odd man out because I would be sitting there fighting for people in the gi and saying like, nah, let's give some love to the guys in the gi because like I want to give them the same money we give to the no gi. And we had two competitors close out for the finals in gi. And they were like, yeah, we don't want to do a match. And I go, what do you mean you don't want to do a match? They're like, well, we're on the same team. And I go, okay.
Yeah.
And then they're looking at me like, give me money. We're going to split it and split the money to us. And the one thing that happened in that is that I told them, I was like, oh, okay, even if I want to do that, you're quoting me a price that we did not put out and advertise. So you're quoting a price from a previous tournament and you think that you're going to split that prize money. And I'm like, no, that price you're quoting is inaccurate.
Yeah.
And then it became me trying to educate them and saying like, well, while we're talking about it, let me tell you what this means. If you think that you're not going to make any money, let me tell you that if you don't give me any footage, then I can't get more money for the next time. And as a result of that, you're only screwing over the people for the next time and me who was trying to get you guys the opportunity for this. So like, I'm all for you guys competing. I want to give you guys the money, but you're kind of screwing us here by not having at least some kind of match because then I have no footage, which means I can't make a sizzle, which means I can't get other people to buy. So what do you want? So what ended up happening was they were going back and forth. And I was like, can you produce where you think you saw the money quoted figure at? And they're like, no. And they're like looking for it and they can't find it. And I go, I'm going to save you the trouble. You won't be able to find it. And they're like, why? And I go, because I did it. And I go, and I know what I did and did not do, and I did not quote that price. That's why you
Mm.
can't find it. So if you admit you're a liar, I'll pay you the money. And they're like,
Mm.
and they look at me, they go, well, and I go, what are you going to say? And they're like, well, we're lying. And I go, here's your money. Get out.
Oh, wow.
It was not my meeting host Raph. Everybody wants to meet host Raph. Producer Raph is a little more cut and dry.
Sure.
But it was more so me just being like, listen, dudes, I don't love this, but I would be willing to meet you halfway if you're on dicks about it.
Sure. I gotcha. Well, that's some of the problems with, there's always going to be drama queens or people who are, causing additional headaches for you.
On the converse side, I did notice that there was a guy who I just recently interviewed who said that he saw me working as a host, where in between matches, he was like, yeah, dude, you were going out and doing jokes with the crowd and like entertaining people. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah, that was an event where they asked me to do it the last minute and they gave me no direction. And he's like, yeah, I thought you were funny. And I'm like, oh, shit. Thank God, man. And he's like, that's where I knew you from. And I go, oh, my God. That was such a last minute sort of a thing that they put together that they gave me no instructions, but they're like, stretch. So
Yeah.
I think people recognize when you do something that's new and a little bit different, they can see what you're contributing and they can see like, okay, this is maybe going to give me an opportunity in a different way that other people may not. So even if it feels like people are new to it and whatnot, I'm pretty sure they're going to appreciate your efforts. I want to ask this though. You mentioned that you're kind of working to make it more engaging, more interesting. What are you doing with the rule set? If I can so ask, what is the rule set?
For sure. So it's a sub-only rule set first. I think first off, like points rule sets like pervert the martial art. I feel like it has a negative impact on the athletes. I feel like it makes more athletes more hesitant to pull the trigger. It makes for less exciting matches. So first, I'm doing a sub-only rule set. So we could get more into like why I think points suck, but I think points in general are just not a good way to do it. Like it seems if you were to go back to the beginning of jiu-jitsu and like you're trying to create a jiu-jitsu competition, it makes sense why they score positions and why the initial implementation of it makes sense in your mind. It makes sense I guess like hypothetically if you're about to create one, but the actual implementation of it always seems to pervert the martial arts and almost every martial art anytime you score specific positions. So like in most points rule sets, like what it ends up working out to be is that guys are extremely hesitant to pull the trigger because of the risk of being scored negatively. And then on the other side of that, as soon as an athlete gets a positive score, their most game plan or a perfectly acceptable game plan is to essentially stall out the rest of the match. So if you get up 2-0 halfway through the match, now just cool off, hang on to that lead, and ride the rest of this match out. Like for one, that is extremely boring to the spectator. That fucking sucks. And then for two, is that really the best show of who has better jiu-jitsu? The guy who can get 2 points and then avoid engagement the rest of the match. Does that mean that guy necessarily has better jiu-jitsu? I don't think so. And so I think the sub-only rule set is the most conducive to an exciting match for the spectators, and then also it allows athletes freedom to fucking send it and go for things. And maybe you risk being in a bad position, and you'll have to get out, but at least you don't have to get out and overcome a 4-point deficit. The combination of those two things is extremely difficult to overcome, and is like it's also like a mental hurdle that like it really it's tough to do. And so sub-only rule set is what I do. And then the question from there is what happens in the event of no submission. And there's a few different ways to answer that. Some people do no time limits. No time limit sucks, I think also. It's like, we've seen matches that are literally hours or over an hour. That fucking sucks. That's crazy. The time limit, I think, honestly gives, it makes, it creates urgency. You have to make it happen within a certain amount of time. And so now in a timed sub-only match, what happens at the end of the regulation if there's no submission? So people do it in different ways. like there's EBI overtime. I think Eddie Bravo has had an incredible contribution to the sport, and I think he's done insane things. I mean, if you just look at him comparatively to other black belts, he's in the 1% of 1% of 1%, and he's invented things that have had a big impact on jiu-jitsu as far as technique wise. And the EBI overtime is a really interesting answer to the question of like what happens in a sub-only rule set in the event of no submission. And it's like essentially like a college overtime, college football overtime, that like both, in college football, you're started on the 20-yard line, you got 4 downs to make it happen, and then the other team has the same thing. And so in jiu-jitsu, in EBI overtime, you're started on a very advantageous position, and you've got innings to get it done. And so you've got top of the inning, bottom of the inning, one where you're attacking, one where you're defending. And so it's a really interesting to the answer to the question of like what happens in the event of no submission on a sub-only rule set. But the problem with it is sometimes how it plays out is a guy can get absolutely dominated for the regulation, and then maybe, but doesn't get submitted. And now he gets put into an advantageous position that he would have never earned and happens to get the finish in overtime. Now, again, that I don't think is the display of who has better jiu-jitsu. Again, what I'm trying to create is the highest expression of jiu-jitsu competition that is the most conducive to a show of who has the best jiu-jitsu. Now, in this EBI overtime, if you got wrecked for 8 minutes and then you get put in back and you end up getting a finish quicker than the other guy, I don't think that means you have better jiu-jitsu. You would have never earned that position in the first place. So I think it's, again, a very interesting answer, and I love what Eddie has done for the sport, but I don't think it's the ideal answer. So the other way to do it is judge's decision. So I think as far as what I can come up with, I think this is the best answer of what happens in the event of no submission. Now, there's a few different competitions that do it different ways, like Fight to Win does it in a way that they emphasize submission attacks. So again, Seth is an awesome guy. I love what he's done for the sport. Fight to Win is a badass event, and I really love the whole thing that they put on. I think it's fucking sick. But I think the emphasis on submission attacks is also not the ideal way to do it, because when guys get into a position of, maybe it looks like there's a submission, and then they'll be like, grimacing, really trying to sell it to the judges and be like, I almost got it. And then at the end, they're like, I had that really close submission attempt. It's a way for athletes to sort of try to game the system. And I think that's what, points rule sets is especially are facilitate as a way to game the rule set. And I think that's what, even EBI overtime, a lot of guys, their whole game plan going into it is just to avoid engagement during the entire regulation. And then because they've spent 2 months, a 2-month training camp only working back and armbar, this is what they're super tight at. This is how they're gaming to win the match. So what I'm trying to do is my rule set is mostly modeled after WNO, who has, they do it there's like 3 primary criteria. I mean, mine's a little bit different, but it's mostly the same. It's, mine is aggression, the guy who's moving forward. I don't look negatively upon guard pulling. I actually incentivize monetarily wrestling. I offer takedown of the night bonus on my competition. So regardless of final placement, or regardless even if you win a single match. So there's a takedown of the night bonus awarded. So like if a guy goes out, hits a sick fucking takedown, a lat drop, a suplex, something that is dope, but ends up getting submitted later in that match, he could lose that. He could not win a single match, but ends up hitting a submission of the night. He gets $250 for that takedown of the night. And, hopefully I'll be able to increase these bonuses in the future, but this is what it is right now. Now, I guess back to my criteria, I've got aggression, the guy who's moving forward. 2 is dangerous submission attacks. And I lay it out for the judges. Don't let athletes sell you on bullshit submissions. A dangerous submission attack has to result in either a hyperextension or a serious reaction from the opponent. If it does not result in those 2, it's given 0 weight. And then the third is positional control. Your typical scoring positions, back, mount, guard passing, takedowns, all of these things. And throughout these three criteria, there's no hierarchy. So it's not like submission attacks are weighted heavily, and if you go for one, maybe you're going to get the nod. No, it's you win 2 out of 3 of the criteria to get the nod. So if you have really dangerous submission attacks, like you really almost get your opponent, and maybe you almost put him out, like he almost lets his arm break. You got really tight on this, but the entire match, you were on your heels. The other guy was the aggressor. I mean, he was aggression the whole time. And then also, too, he positionally dominated. He'd mounted you, took your back, all of this. In this situation, the person who even had good submission attacks, he would lose because he only won 1 out of 3 of the 3 criteria. And my goal with this is to create a rule set that can't be gamed. Like, your game plan should be to go out there and do your best jiu-jitsu. It should be go out there and do effective jiu-jitsu, and in every way, jiu-jitsu is effective. Not to have any sort of game ulterior motive other than go out and fucking try to submit your opponent. And so that's sort of what I'm trying to create here.
Very cool. Thank you for walking me through that, because you are preaching to the choir here. The tournaments that I have run in the past were sub only. So I am very much in the same boat. I have also run tournaments that were sub only, no time limit, which here's my issue. I like the concept of it, but I think the execution of it from a television standpoint is unbearable. Because I feel like, I work in TV. We all got to go do something else at some point. Like, this thing's that's why Eddie's thing, while not a perfect system, it makes a lot of sense, where you go, hey, listen, dude, this doesn't mean you're better. It just means we got to keep this thing going. And before, even then, when they had no time limits for the overtime, it doesn't sit right with you either, because it's like, dude, this is 30 minutes of a match. Like, go back and watch Craig and Wagner. That shit, we weren't sure if we were leaving the venue that day.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you kind of have to take the audience into consideration when you do these things. Otherwise, there's no purpose. It's just 2 people having a match. But if people can't watch it, what are we doing here? So as a result of that, I understand that, I like the concept of it if you can give me performance highlights. I think that's a potential way to sell it. And that people, if you really want to be a masochist and watch the whole thing, you put it out there. And, Shugio did it. And then later, the Ultimate Grappler, a.k.a. Who's Next from Flow Grappling, they essentially did that. And I think that's not a bad way to do it, where you can put it online and do that sort of a thing. But if you're running a tournament, there's a lot of stuff that could get backed up as a result of 1 or 2 super long matches.
Yeah, exactly. Like, conceptually, it's like, okay, who has the better jiu-jitsu? Let them go until someone submits each other. I mean, that's cool. But like you said, it also has to be interesting for the spectator as well. That's like something that I'm trying to solve here also. I think one of the main reasons people say jiu-jitsu is non-spectator sport is mostly because the rule sets, a lot of these point competitions are just flat out not interesting. And even though interesting matches happen in these point rule sets, they happen, like in lieu of the rule set, not because of the rule set. It's because athletes are exciting and are really just getting after it. It's not like the rule sets are conducive to these exciting matches. And like you said, it really does have to be interesting for the spectator. I mean, one thing I'm also trying to do is, like, right now my competition does have sign-up fees, but I think eventually there should be a platform. I think there are some of them, but it's only the 1% of 1% that get into them that are just invite only, and there's no sign up fee or anything. The majority of tournaments are run because there's, 1,000 competitors who sign up at $150 each, and that's what funds the whole tournament. And like these IBJJF tournaments, I can go and compete next to some of the legends in the world. I can go, spend $150 and be in the same bracket as them. I mean, that's not really ideal. It's like sort of like, I have other friends who have, competed next to Leandro Lowe, like in the same bullpen, and all these guys who are extremely, extremely high level. I mean, it would be, comparatively to other sports, it'd be like if Lionel Messi had to spend $150 to go do soccer in front of people. I mean, that's just, it seems ludicrous in the other sports, but jiu-jitsu is still at a novice infant stage. And so things like this still happen. Like it has to be exciting for the spectator, and yeah, so I think that's an important part of the whole competition as well.
Having said that, from my own personal perspective, like I'm way more of a sub only guy. It's just my style. It's just I like that variation of it. But for
Hmm.
my own competitive goals, I'm putting myself into points tournaments because I'm like, I think it is healthy to get that experience. It's just if I have a preference, I know which one I like better.
Yeah.
And I think there's a host and a room for both. But what you're
Hmm.
doing is you're providing an alternative that, hey, I get that those other tournaments exist, but if you come here, you can test yourself in a rule set that, in your interpretation, is a little bit truer to maybe we're getting closer to who has the better jiu-jitsu.
Yes, and that's I think what competition should be the test of. Now, don't get me wrong. I sign up for IBJJF tournaments. I sign up for ADCC Opens. I love these competitions. I think they're fucking sick. But like, especially on the IBJJF side, I think it's just because they're one of the initial ones of it, and the winning of it carries an extremely high amount of prestige. That's what the reason that people sign up for is to become an IBJJF world champion means a fucking lot. It's sick. But in my opinion, it's like the wrong competitions have the most prestige. I think as the sport evolves and moves forward, we'll move more towards expressions of competition that are conducive to show who has the best jujitsu, not necessarily who's best under a constricted rule set. And again, uh, uh, IBJJF funds their tournament primarily, or a huge part, through the sign-up fees. I mean, I think that how you create a competition that's not funded through the sign-up fees is that it's got to be interesting for the spectator. The spectator has to fund the competitions. It has to be something where spectators come and have a lot of fun watching it, and so that's sort of how you get around that.
I agree. And listen, man, I it's very funny when you're talking with somebody where you're like, I think our perspectives align pretty closely, but it's
Hmm.
also with respect to those other organizations. It's like, listen,
Hmm.
you're not taking them away. You're just
No.
adding more. And when you
Yeah.
get more opportunities, then sometimes people can kind of figure out, oh, I like this better than this.
Yeah.
So if anything,
Yeah. And
it's kind of dope to have that.
yeah, exactly. And IBJJF is not going to lose prestige overnight, or may never. It'll probably always mean a lot to be an IBJJF world champion. But I just think in general, if you're trying to create something of who has the better jujitsu, a sub only rule set makes more sense than a points rule set.
Well, also, I've been doing IBJJF memes for well close to a decade now. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're fine, and
Mhm.
they are notoriously thin-skinned. But
But even there have to are forced to evolve with the sport. Like they didn't allow heel hooks for a long time, and I think that if they would have stuck to that, that would have been a very big negative. And I think because of that, they implemented heel hooks in it. And so,
yep,
I mean, they're going to evolve as the sport evolves as well.
I agree, and I think that the competition forces them to do it. I think that if they didn't have people competing and there were no other dogs in the fight, they'd just be like, "Fuck you guys, we're the IBJJF." At least from this perspective, it's a all right, kicking and screaming. Black belts can get heel hooks, but that's it. And then you look at it and
Exactly.
you go, sure. I had
Yeah.
somebody who was recently on who was basically making the point. They're like, well, I wish masters could get heel hooks and stuff like that. And I'm like, me too, dude. Like that's a big part of my game that I have to
Yeah.
give up whenever I do any of this stuff. And listen, man, I get where they're trying to come from. Maybe they don't think it's a good optic to have a 45-year-old dude hobbling off. Like, I get that. It's just, at the very least, on the pro level, if we're not doing it for the black belts, the real elite, where you can show off the best of our sport, then we're
Yeah.
basically making a rule set that says they're the best under these circumstances. And you
Yes.
think to yourself, okay, I can kind of suspend some disbelief when we say this is the best fighter in the world
Yeah.
because all things considered, there are some rule sets that they have to do or some rules that they have to abide by. But like, I
Hmm.
think we could all get behind no kicking the groin, no biting. Like these
Yeah.
seem like fairly standard things.
Yeah.
But I'm sure a purist is like, well, that's not a real fight. And you go,
Yeah.
listen, dude, dick twist guy. Chill. These are ones that
Yeah.
the rest of us are okay with.
Yeah. Well, it's also the same in MMA. There's still restrictions even with in MMA. There's no eye gouging or groin strikes or, anything like this. And, in jiu-jitsu, you have to be within a jiu-jitsu realm. So that's why I think no heel hooks is just not a true jiu-jitsu realm. If you're limiting any sort of jiu-jitsu attacks, it's just not a full encompassing jiu-jitsu match.
Well, I also find it kind of funny when there are certain rule sets that you'll train for with MMA guys or jiu-jitsu guys even. And then all of a sudden it becomes that now you have to put heel hooks in. And they're like, oh, but I've worked so hard to not have them. And I'm like, well, you're competing in this and you better be used to it or you better have some familiarity with it. But you've competed at things for a long time without it. And it doesn't go away. It's a real threat. So that to me,
that's why, or go ahead. Sorry. I was just going to say, that's why, anytime like I'm teaching classes or anything like that, I mean, I'll teach heel hooks to like newer people, white belts, blue belts. I think it should be something that you're practicing early on, because the people who don't practice it until they're at brown belt or above aren't good at it. It's not like all of a sudden you've done 7 years in a sport and now all of a sudden you're going to just implement new aspects of it. I mean, you can, but you're just going to be way behind the curve. If you can start implementing a more well-rounded jiu-jitsu game from the beginning, you're going to be just better at it as you evolve. And so rather than trying to try your first heel hook when you're a brown belt, if you're attempting it at a white belt, you're going to have a brown belt heel hook by the time you get to brown belt. You're not going to be a novice, be basic, really a novice in certain aspects.
Joey, I realize there's a lot more similarities than differences between us, because I'm literally about to say the same thing. So that's why when we both hit like that, oh, no, you go first. And I go, I think he's going to say the exact same thing. Which is literally day one, I look over at guys. I'm like, hey, you might as well learn this. And I go, you kind of get that parent who wants to make sure you drink in their house. You're like, no. Just, I'm going to show you how to do this, but I don't want you doing it anywhere else. But we want to start with this here. Because my thought process is, when I first started in jiu-jitsu, I went to a 10th planet, and day one, they were already footlocking me. And while I didn't think that made me a footlocker, and especially being maybe a little bit older, you just looked at it from the sense of, I'm not as apprehensive about this. Like, I'm not as ridiculously scared. It's just, I have to solve this problem. And that it doesn't just go away because I'm wearing pajamas. It doesn't just go away because I'm the new guy. People are going to treat me like this because they're not going to assume I'm the new guy all the time. So when I bring my students in, I make it a big point of saying, like, we're going to go over straight footlocks first so that we can understand the concept of knee line. If you understand the concept of knee line, then heel hooks and stuff like that don't seem as terrifying. They also better inform you on when you have to tap.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. Yeah, and I mean, like, because also too, even like if you think of like a old school jiu-jitsu purist, once you get to brown belt and above, knee bars, toe holds, all of these are a big part of the game. And so if you're extremely proficient at getting to them, I mean, you're going to have success with those. If you don't practice them until you get to brown belt, you're not going to practice them, or you're not going to be nearly as good as you are with the rest of your game. And so you're just going to be one less multi-dimensional.
Yeah, one of my homies was like, yeah, I'm all in knee bars right now. And I was like, chill, white belt. I'll show you them. But, you're probably not going to hit them. Like, go for your heart's content. And,
well, and like, I was just going to say, like you said, it makes a lot of sense starting with like straight ankles and certain things that are, acceptable at all levels. And it's also just good beginning, good intros into leg locks.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, I don't make the assumption that everybody who comes into jiu-jitsu is going to want to compete. But a lot of mine is always going to be, this is going to inform you in things that I think that are important for you. So as a guy that you're kind of trusting on this, I've seen the playing field and I've recognized entire games for certain people are this. And if you know how to shut this down, then a white belt who's saying I'm going to knee bar everybody is going to give you his back if you're well educated enough. So just know that it doesn't make you fearful. It can be a strategy that then you reverse engineer and use to your benefit. The
Yeah.
problem is that doesn't happen day one. It takes study and it takes
Yeah.
time and it takes you being in the position to not be as afraid of it. And again, can't say this enough. You got to know when to tap on them. So for me, it's
Oh,
like,
for
no, no,
sure.
no. This is informing you so that I don't see you on a highlight on the Butter Smooth Moves page, because if I see that, then I have to reshare it because I'm going to go, well, what I tell you guys. So I'm doing my best to make sure you guys are not going to get highlight reeled
For sure.
as
And
best as I can.
yeah, and that's true from all positions. You got to know when to tap from kimuras and americanas and arm bars and everything. It's just another jujitsu technique. It's interesting that people think it's so much more dangerous. I
Well,
just
the other thing I like to tell people is, and I love when I can make the comparison between a knee bar and knee placement. I'm sorry. Uh, let's say a knee line and an arm bar, is that when you're looking at it, you're like, it's a similar fulcrum. It's just different body part. So if
yeah,
you don't have that fulcrum, then you don't have to worry as much, but know that's what they're going for. And if they're
yeah,
missing it, you can tell a low level version when somebody doesn't have that fulcrum and they're just trying to pull, then you
yeah,
know that your knee isn't going to have the strain that is going to make you incapacitated. So there's a lot
yeah.
of what I try to do where I go, this is going to sound boring, but I promise you it gets cool. And then once you start doing it, you're never going to stop. So, I definitely try to walk my guys through this. So I want to take a step back here. Obviously, it sounds great. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit more later. September 16th is the next event, but I want to go back to your beginnings because I always want to know why somebody ends up doing this from their own perspective. So where does your jiu-jitsu journey begin? When did you first come across the sport or the martial arts, sir?
Mm. So, I initially got into jujitsu when I think I was like 20 or so. I had my sports career is like I played football since like fifth or sixth grade, played that throughout high school, all 4 years. High school ended. I started boxing for a couple years. I did that for about 2 years. And then for a few different reasons, I sort of walked away from that. And then I wasn't really doing anything athletically for a while. I felt like I was getting a little chubby and I was going for runs and stuff. And I fucking hate running. And I had been listening to podcasts. I've been listening to like Joe Rogan since I was like 15 years old or 16 years old. So I'd heard him talk about it a few times. And so I joined a gym that was pretty close to me. I really liked it right away. I did maybe 3 or 4 months there, and then I got injured for like 6 months. I restarted after that, and I've not stopped since. So, yeah, I've just fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with so many aspects of it, and yeah, I'll continue to do it forever.
I have to ask this because there's two questions we like to ask that are in conjunction with this. Do you remember your very first class? And if so, what do you remember specifically from that very first class experience?
Mm. Um, I do. Like, I remember the exact day, actually. It was like February 3rd, 2016. And I think I just remember like I hit like I don't know, I just a typical white belt. I like walked up to my coach after. I was like, I sub someone, and so it was probably some other first day person, and I think I hit like an Ezekiel or something like that, and um, yeah, but I don't know. I think, yeah, it was just, it felt like it was a great workout. There was so much stuff to learn. It was like a really educational experience. And that was like very engaging for me. Like there's a real, and you can see just a clear difference between some of the, between myself and some of the experts there or some of the teachers there is that there's just like an incredible difference in between like muscle memory and everything, just like drilling with these guys. And, it was really interesting. And I think I took inspiration from some of these people that I saw and was learning from and felt like I wanted to be like that. And so I just kept at it.
Very nice. This is something that I ask because if you look at it, most people who come on my show really, really love this sport. And so I always like to know, when did you know that you fell in love with the sport? Now, I say this with respect to the fact that you have multiple things that you do for it. It's not just the meme page. It's not just running tournaments. It's not just competing. It's the fact that you've combined all of these things and then a podcast on top of it. So I always like to get to know, when did you recognize that this is something that meant more to you than just as a hobby?
Probably like within like the first week or so of training. Like I just absolutely loved it from the beginning, and like I committed to doing as much as I possibly could. Like at the school that I trained at right away, they said like they wanted you to be at least like a two-stripe white belt before you sign up for a competition. But I had been training for like about 2 months or so, and there was one that was posted on a wall. It was in Tucson. I live in Phoenix, so I had to like drive 2 hours, and I'm like, I asked if I could do it, and he's like, well, we'd like you to stay a little bit later or a little bit more experience, and I just ended up doing it anyways, and uh, like I didn't understand rules, points, anything like that. I actually, my very first match, I think I was down like 12-0. And then but I didn't even know. I wasn't sure. I didn't know where you scored and where you didn't scored. And I ended up getting a triangle choke on that person. And then I won like 3 matches total. I won my very first jiu-jitsu competition. And so, I mean, that was really reinforcing for me. And I mean, I've just known, because also too, I've worked another job that's taken a ton of time out of my life, and it's been like a excellent I guess break from it. It's extremely meditative. It's like a way that I can maintain my body health, and it's been just an excellent complement to my life since I've began with it. So I think I knew just right away that I absolutely loved it.
That makes sense, because for me, I always tell people, I'm like, I recognized very quickly that this was something I liked, but we had started doing a podcast when we were essentially white belts. And what I recognized was people are going to take this journey with me for years, that it's going to be like, hey, man, you're listening to me as a white belt tell you these things. And there are some things that have changed. Most things are pretty at their core, but they're just going to see me from the very beginning. And I had no problem being like, that's who I am. I talk good. I'm not a black belt. But at the very least, I can always bring that perspective. And now I'm finding, I'm like, oh, I'm the old man now. Like now, I've got people who have been like, oh, yeah, I've listened to your interviews since I was a kid. And I'm like, ugh, okay, great. Good to know. Yes, I've been around for a bit. So when you get those moments, you kind of think to yourself, like, whatever it is that pulled you in, it's an addiction. It's great, but it definitely is one that is benefiting you. And those who do multiple types of brands or things that they kind of contribute to the sport, it's always cool to hear where those international or those kind of like origins begin. So, okay, let me ask this, because I'm looking behind you this entire time. What is behind you? Is this a Star Wars thing? What sci-fi thing am I looking at behind
This is it's actually I think formerly the Sears Tower. I think it's now called like fucking, I forget what it's called.
It's in Chicago, but yeah,
in Chicago. And so I don't know. You know what? I used to have a cubicle in this office, and I moved into an actual office, and there was a big blank wall. And so I was looking at cool art, and I was like, that looks sick. And so I bought it.
Good for you, because the whole time you've been talking, I've been thinking of like, is that a TIE fighter behind you? Like, what the shit is that? And it was bugging me where I'm like, I can't piece this together. I'm like, for all I know, this is something from Dune, and I don't know that as well. Someone's got to explain this bullshit to me. So it's literally just, it's an actual photo or an actual interpretation of.
No, it's a real photo of the building, like at a sunset time, like above the clouds. And so it's like the highest building above the clouds, and maybe symbolic in that way, just like reaching above. But I think I thought it just looked sick, so that's why I bought it.
Good for you. I'm sure. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my day job is I've worked in commercial real estate for about 8 years now, and so that's what I've done for most of my life, and why jiu-jitsu has been like a great, I guess, release past that, and why I've been able to get to a point where I can now fucking lose a bunch of money starting a jiu-jitsu competition.
Yeah, I
So
was about to say, I was like, normally you got to make some good money elsewhere because you're not going to get the funds just from doing jiu-jitsu. So it's got to
no,
come
no,
from a deep place.
definitely.
But the nice part is it also shows your commitment because that's a pretty intensive job when it really when it kicks in, man. I'm in the process of finalizing selling a house and literally the amount of paperwork I have to fill out and read and all this bullshit. I'm like, I'm just selling this shit.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
my agent, he called me up and he goes, "Hey man, yeah, you were right. You found out things that were not right in the contract." And I was just like,
mm.
"Yeah, dude, because all I'm
What are
doing
you
is
here
just reading
for?
it." Yeah, but I love the idea. No. I mean, he knew, but it's like when I was looking at it, as we're about to close and we're about to hit the end of escrow, it's now like we have some stuff in the garage. And I'm looking through and I go, hey, they mentioned that they wanted things from the house, which is fine. But
Yeah,
they asked for the mirrors. The mirrors were not on display. They can have
hmm,
the fucking mirrors, but
yeah,
do they really want them? And he was
yeah.
like, all right, cool. He sends them a note. He's like, do you guys want the mirrors? And they're like, nah. And then all of a sudden they text back. They're like, just kidding. We do want those mirrors that are in the garage. And I go,
Oh wow.
and I'm like, they can fucking have them, dude. I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
It's really dumb. So
yeah.
that's my very small experience with it. But
Yeah, well, that's like, I mean, there's a lot of headaches in residential real estate, and I was sort of glad that I've got different types of headaches in commercial real estate, but it's also a very difficult one to break into. So, yeah,
mm,
I've initially worked two jobs simultaneously for the first 3 years while still training jujitsu and doing all of that. I basically sacrificed any sort of social life for a long time and was able to finally quit my second job. And then I've been doing this for the past few years. Thankfully the market's been good for a couple years. And yeah, it's been just, and also too, it allows me freedom. Like I've not had a boss since like year 2 or 3 in here. And so I don't think I could ever do something like that. And then it just allows me more freedom for my other entrepreneurial ventures, like starting a jiu-jitsu competition or, the podcast or all these things. Like I don't have to be anywhere at any time other than, the times I set for myself. So it allows me tremendous freedom in that way too.
well, let's get into that. Why are you starting a podcast? There's too many of us. You don't need to join us. You already got
Yeah.
enough shit going on. Plus, you have a very successful career. You don't need to come do this. You don't need to slum with the rest of us.
I really enjoy talking and I enjoy trying to work on my communication skills. And I think it's a extremely fun way to just further develop my communication skills. It was just earlier this year actually that I was thinking about, I was just really fucking high. And I was thinking that communication is the primary reason that humans have dominated the world. It's our ability to tell our children, hey, don't do this or do it this way. Or you could read this book and save what this guy spent 50 years trying to figure out, you can learn in a week or what have you. And our ability to communicate is a primary reason that we've dominated the entire globe. And what a better way to fucking work on your communication and become a better orator than a podcast where you're just chopping it up with your buddies. And, my first podcast, I got fucked up, super drunk with a good friend of mine. And, what a fun thing to do, to be honest. And it's also too, it's such an interesting way to have a conversation because in my studio, I've got headphones and whatnot, and I've got a really nice mic like yours, and so you hear each other perfectly, and you also hear your own voice perfectly, and so you're sort of locked into a conversation that's totally unlike how you have conversations typically. And also typically you don't sit down and say, hey, you want to just sit here for the next 2 hours and talk?
Yeah.
And so, I've gotten to know my friends more. I've gotten to know my casual friends a lot more. My third or fourth episode was with people that I never even met. There was this girl that I've known for quite a while. I mean, I don't know, 3 or 4 months or something, just from she works at a coffee shop that I go to every morning, and she said she started a podcast, so she came on with her co-host, and those two, her co-host is a guy that I met as he got to my front door, and so we talked for over an hour, and I mean, what an interesting way to get to know someone. And so yeah, I mean, it's just sort of a fun venture to just have fun doing. And so actually I call it no credentials because jujitsu, I absolutely love. I'm dedicating a big part of my life to it. I'm spending time and money trying to create an answer to certain problems I see within the competition scene. But it's just a part of my life. And my No Credentials podcast is my way to just talk about anything and everything. I've had friends on. Like today, I've got a podcast later too with a buddy of mine that I met through Toastmasters, which is like a meetup group for people who want to become public speakers. And he's the designated broker at some other commercial real estate brokerage here in Arizona. And I'm just going to talk to him, mostly probably about whatever, to be honest. And so that's kind of my goal with it too. It's like, I love jujitsu podcasts. I love jujitsu in general, but I spend so much of my time about it. I don't necessarily always want to be talking or listening about it. I'm fairly multifaceted as an individual, and I'm interested in a lot of different things. And so I want to just have interesting conversations with interesting people. And what a great way to do that. What better way to do that than a podcast?
That's awesome, man. Good on you. I like the idea that you, now you can be a friend because it's not just a jiu-jitsu podcast.
Yeah.
We're going to have words.
Not a direct competitor.
I was like, I don't know that I can beat you in jiu-jitsu, so I can't really threaten you too much. But I do know that whenever I see people put up shows, and especially if you are talking with somebody from Toastmasters, I did speech and debate for years and competed at a national level for it. So we're very familiar with the Toastmasters. Like that's kind of like what you do. Some people do it after, and then some people do it where they never had any experience in speech or debate because they're looking to try and get a new skill, or they're looking to develop that part of them. So I think I'm a huge proponent of people learning more how to articulate themselves because it's hard, man. It's a very difficult skill to explain to people.
Yeah.
But more than actually talking, fewer people are actually taught how to listen. So I don't think it's until people host a show, and this isn't always the case, it's actually something that infuriates me when I'm listening to a show, is when they don't actually take the time to listen. So if, a host is over talking multiple times over their guest, they're really not asking for a communication back and forth.
Yeah.
So I pay a lot of attention to how much an actual host gets in there. Like a lot of the times I'll look it through even on my own interviews and I'm like, I should probably be at a 20 or 30% max on the amount of time I'm speaking, because why else are you here? Otherwise it would just be me talking to like a nebulous cloud and just going, hey everybody, here are my thoughts and here's this. But I do find that it does improve that skill of people learning how to listen and take in information and then process it, and then kind of come to those moments where they learn something, they share something, they do something that was not prevalent before that conversation. So I can tell oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's totally true. I mean, a good conversation is like a dance. It's back and forth. I'm listening to you, then you're listening to me, and we're playing off of each other. I mean, that's what a good conversation is. And so that's something also too you learn from doing podcasting is some people don't want to have the back and forth. They just want to like spit out and like and in certain situations, maybe like if you're trying to learn about certain things, maybe it's good to just let people rant. And like I've done that as well for sure. But like when you're just trying to have a conversation, most people in general, like it's like they're not listening to what you're saying. They're just waiting until you shut up so they could say their point.
Yep. And again, I think it differentiates the higher tier shows, in my opinion, because I think there's a lot of shows where that crosstalk happens where, sometimes you don't even hear one thing because too many people are talking over each other. I'm also used to a lot of performers because as somebody who's done comedy as well, sometimes you got a joke and you're in the pocket and you're trying to get this joke out and you're like, shut up, let me get to it. And there are plenty of times where I have a joke in pocket, but I don't want to disrupt that flow. And if it disrupts the flow, then I hold on to it. And if it still doesn't make sense, you discard it and you go somewhere else. So I always tell people, I'm like, it just depends on what you want. And there are definitely a lot of shows where you'll hear the host who's a comedian, they'll interrupt, but sometimes they're right on the money. Like sometimes you're like, nah, that was worth it. So it's hard to tell somebody like it's never worth it. It's like, that's not true. Sometimes
No.
it is, but like,
Yeah.
are you this tier of comedian to be able to pull that off? Probably not. So
Yeah. And do you like you got to take risks in comedy? That's I've been trying to work my funny bone a little bit more lately, especially. You said you've done like stand-up comedy
yes,
before?
sir.
Wow, how cool is that?
I loved it. I mean, it's a natural extension of speech and debate.
Yeah.
So it to me, it was something I always wanted to do. The only thing I don't love about stand up, because I love being in person with people. So you were mentioning that conversations can be a certain way. So right now, this interview is different than it would be in person. The
Yeah.
questions might be the same, but the amount of actual conversion, because I can read you a little bit better in person, is like,
Mhm.
oh, hey, yeah, there's a proximity between us that you go, oh, yes, I'm going
Mhm.
to say this, you're going to say this. And what I like about the in-person interviews, especially from the jiu-jitsu side, is that there is kind of an element of danger when you're doing jokes, especially to high talent who are
Yeah.
very good at jiu-jitsu. And so what I've always appreciated when I've done coverage for live events is it's one thing if I tell a joke about Gary Tonin to Gary Tonin on an interview like this. There's no
Yeah.
danger. It's just, hey, man, you're in another country. You're in Texas. You
Yeah.
can't touch me right now.
Yeah.
But when I'm right next to him and I'm saying like, dude, your striking is garbage.
Yeah.
Let's just be real. Somebody might watch that and go, Raph might get killed.
Yeah.
So if that's the top tier person who has to be a professional, imagine what it's like if you and I are sitting next to each other and I'm telling you, why the fuck are you starting a podcast? People might look at that and go, I don't know, is this okay? Is this going to end?
Yeah.
Like, how is that going to go? You know,
Yeah.
I think there's different rules and stuff. So I like doing the in-person stuff. The thing
Yeah.
I hate about stand-up comedy is I don't want to travel. I like people
Yeah.
coming to me. Like, I don't mind going to gyms and doing shows at gyms, but
That's
the
cool.
gig portion of stand-up comedy is something that does not appeal to me because I go, I don't want to be in Alaska. I don't want to be in Alabama.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here or doing this or this. This now has changed the game with digital forms where there's an audience that can potentially show up for the same kind of jokes. But for me, I like the addition of also putting a light on other people. So I used to not only do stand-up, but my more successful stuff was actually doing, because I worked at the Tonight Show, I actually would do a late night talk show at the comedy clubs with my connections. And it would just be me pulling in comedians, doing skits, doing all branded sort of stuff. And that I liked doing that because I had 12 minutes of show for me, which was a monologue and maybe some sketch stuff. And then the rest of the hour plus 30 or whatever it was, it would be comedians. I'm introducing you to this person. Now they're going to talk with me. Now they're going to go do this. Now we're bringing on somebody else. Here's a sketch. And that was fun to me. So I would do something like that again, but I also recognize like this is probably my better bread and butter. Like this is where I feel like I do my best work.
Nice. Well, that's good. Yeah. And I agree that being in person is going to be always superior, but this is also a really cool alternative because you're in LA right now. I'm in Scottsdale and we're having a conversation together. So at first I was like, well, dang, because you said you're in LA. I'm like, all right, well, next time I still do come over there. Sometimes next time I'm around, we'll get on together. You're like, we'll just do it over Zoom. Boom. And so,
well, I always think of it like this, which is you have an event coming up. So let's do that. Let's do our first conversation like that. And the invitation is still there because I always tell people, I'm like, I love doing them in person. I have people come to my gym. And the added benefit of doing it in person is always, hey, man, do you want to, we can train. We can go grab a bite to eat after, make a whole thing of it. Because I'll be honest with you, if you are interviewing jiu-jitsu people, little tip from the old guy, there's nothing like getting an interview with somebody you've rolled with because they trust you more. Like they give you a much more detailed interview, and that inherent danger because of what we do, it's out the window. Like then it just becomes they're going to fuck me up when we roll. So,
Mm,
all
yeah.
right,
Well,
and to me, it's more worth it to get the joke. So I'm like, yeah, you can do
yeah.
whatever you want, man. It's good training.
Yeah. And it's like a way that like you relate to each other. I mean, it's such a thing. Like jujitsu is like another great positive thing about jujitsu is that like I've met so many people through it, and it's so interesting how like I can roll with someone, two times, and like now I'll see him in the supermarket. I'm like, oh, whoa, how you been? Where you been? I haven't seen you. Well, how come you've been at open mat? It's like we're friends, and we've got just this common thing that we share, and so it's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, now that I know you a little bit better, when we're rolling, I'm just going to be like, that was 2 points.
Yeah,
Just want to point that
exactly.
out. And because I know that nothing will make you either less interested in the role or more like, dude, who the fuck keeps points in a role like this? Get the fuck out of here, man.
No, I mean I've got guys I train with that are strictly gi, strictly IBJJF. That's their whole life's goal as jujitsu wise is that. So and I get it, and I mean like don't get me wrong too. If you ever sign up for an IBJJF tournament, I do myself. You should absolutely play the rule set and play the game that there is. But in my opinion, it's just not the highest expression of jujitsu competition, and that's what I'm trying to create is the highest expression of jujitsu competition.
Yeah. I mean, I do something even stupider than that. I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. So with our buddies, if we're rolling and their shoulders are both on the mat, I will literally count a pin. And
Yeah.
they're like, that doesn't mean anything. I was like, well, why'd you kick out? If it doesn't mean
Yeah,
anything, why are you playing along with it? And
exactly.
the intentionality of that is always move. Like,
Yeah.
I don't clearly think this is winning. I think it's more of a, while we're training, you should have your shoulders off and try to get an underhook. Like you should be trying to escape.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's
That's
just,
that's a funny thing too. I'll do that as well. My girlfriend's actually a blue belt, and we were rolling the other day, and she shot a single leg on me, and I spladled her, and so and she's like ultra flexible. Some guys you can actually tap from that position, but she's ultra flexible and like she's like in no danger as far as like hurting anything. And so I'm like, all right, well, just 1, 2, 3, okay. Well, then you're pinned. Sorry, you lost that way.
again, this is how I can tell that you and I, again, there's way more commonalities between our experiences and what we do because I'm like, my man understands nonsense, so I know we'll get along. But I didn't know that you're doing a similar shtick as well in the sense of like, hey man, normally this would get a sub, but you're pretty flexible. So
Yeah.
we're going to move on and I'm going to claim my win real quick. And
We're gonna change rule sets real fast, and and now I've got my win. Now we can transition.
Now, having said that, I got a guy who I work with on my wrestling a little bit, and he's a D1 wrestler, and he's good at jiu-jitsu, but I still have like a little bit on him because I work wrestling with him, he works jiu-jitsu with me. And so anytime I'm in top, I'll just be like, yo, this is a pin. I want to be real clear. Like,
Yeah.
it's not happening
Yeah.
if we go straight up wrestling. I'm just going to take my win right now. And like, I've
Just so
had
you
him.
know.
And my thing is we have like footage of it or whatever, and he'll always be like, I want to dispute that my shoulder was up. And I was like, no, dude, the refs were completely they waved this off. This is totally me. And I just tell people, I'm like, you just try to make it fun for people when you're
Yeah.
training with them. You're always doing the same thing every single day. So why not try to make it a nice, fun experience that they'll remember? Or when they tell somebody else, they're like, can you believe this bullshit that Raf's doing? And I'm like, yeah, dude.
Yeah,
That's me.
exactly. Yeah, that's funny.
Well, let's do this, sir. Why don't we go ahead and start to put a pin on this conversation for where we are right now? Obviously, I'm going to give you an opportunity to shout out anybody you want to, but I know the event is September 16th in Chandler, Arizona. I'm very
Yes.
excited for you. I'm going to put the camera directly on you right now, and I want to give you the opportunity to shout out anybody you want to, whether it's your team or give a mention to any sponsors or give a mention to anybody that is helping to put this event together or who helps you on the side. But the floor, sir, is all yours.
Sure. So again, BSFC2 is happening September 16th in Chandler, Arizona. If you're local, if you want to travel to come out here, I'd love to have you. There's still spaces in both of the brackets. Both brackets, it's $150 to sign up, and you've got a potential $1,500 prize for winning. So if you usually spend $150 for the chance at a $3 medal, here you can come and get $1,500. It's a gamble on yourself, And the best jiu-jitsu athletes do exactly that. They make that gamble. And so, again, I've mentioned it earlier in the conversation, but I'm just trying to create a high-level platform that's exciting for the competitors, exciting for the spectators, a platform for athletes to get paid. And I'm just trying to create something fucking sick in the sport. So, yeah, I'm just trying my best out here. And I'd like to shout out maybe my coach, Issa Abel at One Love Grappling Arts. If you're in Phoenix looking for somewhere to train, come check out our gym. We're actually about to expand. We'll move in our new space in about a week or two. And I'm just super excited about the future of that. I love all my boys at One Love Grappling Arts and everyone who's helping me out with the event. And I'd love to just, whether you come watch this one, come compete at it, it'll also be available on pay-per-view. You can check it out. I've got my page is Butter Smooth Moves at Butter Smooth Moves on Instagram. You'll see the pay-per-view link on there. It'll be $20. We had a super excited time the first time. We've got commentators. I got my boy Willie from Tucson going to be commentating. My buddy Issa, who's my head coach, also commentating, and it'll be a super fun time. So whether you experience it in some fashion this way or just ride with me for the future, I'm trying to create something sick here, and that's my goal. So I'd love to for you to see as I grow, as I grow, and as we all grow together.
Well, big ups to you, man. That sounds really, really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And again, we always appreciate those folks who are giving grapplers more opportunities, especially opportunities to win cash. Like, that doesn't happen all the time. And for me, like, dude, it's already hard enough to just do jiu-jitsu. My heart always extends a little bit to these guys who are trying to do it as a profession, because you
Yeah,
know everything that is against them in terms of making some money. So
yeah,
I very, very much appreciate that. And offer still stands. We'll do this in person. We'll get some training in. If you're ever on out in
absolutely,
LA, I would love nothing more than that, because you sound like good people, and you sound like my kind of people. So I appreciate you,
awesome.
sir. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to say bye to you off air in a second, but I'm going to close this bitch up. But my appreciation to you, good luck, and congratulations on getting up all of the great stuff that you got going on out there, sir.
Well, thank you.
All right, you guys, that is going to start to do it for us. I just want to say this real quick before we get you on out of here. Number one, if you want to support the show, HY.PAGE /grappling hour. Become a member for $5 a month. $5. That's all I'm asking. $5 a month. You see these interviews 30 days before everybody else. And when you do that, you support the show. And when you support the show, it means we can do other cool and dope shit. Maybe in the future, even taking this on the road, I don't know, to go see this in person. Just saying. We're willing to travel. We're willing to do shit. Keep that in mind. All right. So do that. And for a few extra dollars, you can see us break down matches. You can see us do extra episodes, all that good jazz at HY.PAGE /grappling hour. All right. The other thing, Discord. Join us there. Become somebody who is going to get engaged on a regular daily basis with all of our nonsense. We're doing jokes, we're doing viral videos, but questions of the day every single weekday, just to get an idea of what's going on in the community. And if you made it this far, you dick, and you didn't like, share, and subscribe, what's wrong with you? This is free content for you on YouTube. All I'm asking is for like, subscribe, share. And in the comment section down below, even if you didn't love this interview, why not just put something for engagement? Why not just say like, hey, Raph, I like your hair. Hey, Raph, I don't like your hair. I think your head is too big. I don't care what it is. Just put something in the comment section to let me know that you watched all the way through. All right, that's going to do it for us here at the Grappling Hour. It has been a great day for grappling. We'll see you back on the mats.
Perfect.